ISAs, or individual savings accounts. They're probably something we should all use, and now is the time to decide which ISA provider you're going to use for the up and coming tax year, with today's focus being on the stocks and shares ISA. The rules are that you can only pay into one type of each ISA each financial year. But when you're faced with an overwhelming amount of choice, how are you going to whittle it down to the ISA provider you're going to use? You've got Robo investors, discount brokers, established giants like HL and Vanguard, you've got fee-free investing, hell, you've even got your own bank. Honestly, it feels like the only thing that's harder than deciding which ISA platform to use for the year is making a video about which ISA platform to use for the year that is both entertaining and informative. Let's give it a go, shall we?
With so many options to choose from, people find it very difficult to choose at all.
Can I get you something?
Coffee. Black, white, flat white, Americano. French press, cold press, espresso. Frappe, latte, oat, soy, full fat, or skinny milk. Jeans. Skinny fit, low rise, shapely vibe. Boyfriend, builder, or carpenter. 501s, 402s, flares, or those bootcut ones that sit just a little bit above your shoes. More choice is always good. So much so that we now find ourselves in a position where Tesco's thinks it's necessary to stock 95 different options under cooking oil, 45 of which are of the olive variety. So after spending 6 hours trying to decide which shape of pasta you're going to buy, you stood there in an aisle dedicated to what is essentially olive juice, contemplating the difference between a virgin and an extra virgin.
Is it true that if you don't use it, you lose it?
Well, the crippling paralysis of too many choices is not something that only applies to addictive drinks, denim, and sexually frustrated olives.
Extra virgin olive oil.
In a study conducted by Vanguard that looked at voluntary retirement plans, basically work-based pensions, they looked at 1 million different staff members spread over 200 different businesses, and they found that the more options you offered to people ahead of them signing up to the pension scheme, the less people signed up. So for every 10 funds you added to the choice, 2% of people dropped off. Basically, if you offered 50 funds, 10% less of your staff would sign up than if you only offered 5. Which is mental to think when you think that these businesses were willing to give away free money into those pension pots, but people just didn't sign up because they were bamboozled by the choice. Also, it's a very human trait that when faced with a lot of choice, we can often question whether the choice we made was actually the best one, even if the one that we've picked is perfectly adequate. It's why I find Netflix so stressful, and it's why now anyone with a mobile phone and the Tinder app backs themselves as a Casanova. Because why settle when only a swipe away could be a perfect 10, whose type just so happens to be slightly overweight, badly groomed white boys with a distinct lack of prospects who spend way too much time in their loft. Are you talking about me? So when faced with the realisation you get to pick one ISA a year, how do we narrow it down? When it comes to picking a stocks and shares ISA, most of the focus online is typically on fees, and rightfully so. All investors should aim to reduce the amount of fees that they pay on their investments as much as possible. But I also think it's really important to consider the style of investing that you want to do before you sign up to a platform. Because there's nothing worse than signing up to an ISA, paying some money in, and then realising it wasn't really what you wanted. Now, while the main focus ultimately will be on the fees, I've also broken down the different ISA options I'm covering today into the different styles of investing. And the 3 styles are as follows. Do it for me, do it with a little bit of help, and do it yourself.
Do it.
Of course, as always, I will tell you what I'm going to do as well, but I'm not you, and everything in this video is just my opinion. I don't think fees should be the only consideration, but I do think they should form part of the decision-making process. But who you decide to go with is completely up to you, fees or not. But to get the most out of this video, start by asking yourself a question. Do I want to be in full control of my investment decisions, or do I want something a little bit more handheld? From there, feel free to use the timestamps below to navigate to the section that you think applies to you. Or if you don't want to destroy my average watch time, feel free to watch the whole video. I'll really appreciate it, and in return I'll cram in as many olive oil jokes as I possibly can. Right, for now, let's start with the Do It For Me platform.
Do it.
All of these platforms obviously offer ISAs and can be categorised by their promise to make investing really simple and almost hands-free. Really, they're targeting individuals who want to invest but don't want to put any time into it, or people who are brand new to the space and want to get involved but they feel a bit scared because they feel like an
Extra virgin.
In this category you get companies like Moneybox, Wealthify, Nutmeg and Plum. There are loads of others, but they all do similar things. They basically automate the investing process by collecting your funds and then investing those funds into a selection of different investments. In most cases, there is some element of choice around the investment, which is normally focused around you selecting a risk profile. These platforms are slick, easy to use and well branded, but my main gripe here is essentially the cost. Once you strip away any add-on features like weekly roundups, etc., what you're essentially doing here is investing in index funds. This is something anyone with a smartphone can do for themselves. And if you like the whole automated I don't look at it kind of thing, then you could just set up a direct debit, or you could use something like Trading 212's Pi feature, which we'll cover in a minute. But as an example, Moneybox charge a monthly fee of £1 and then a platform fee of 0.45% per year just for the service. And then you pay an additional fee on top of this based on the fund you invest in, and that can be as high as 0.3%. Plum is £1 a month and 0.5% for the basic investment plan, then a further fund fee on top of this. And then Wealthify doesn't have a monthly fixed charge, but is 0.6% with an additional fund fee on top. Wealthify and a couple of others also offer ethical investing options, which is nice, but it costs more. Which is not nice. Stop charging people who are trying to do right by the world more money, please. But anyway, these robo investors or do it for me apps have a place in the world, but basically you're paying a premium here for the convenience of not having to do anything. Over time, those fees will really add up. I personally wouldn't use them for this reason, but I do understand why people would. And honestly, my opinion is it's better to be investing than not. And if this is your route to start investing, absolutely amazing, go for it. But with a little extra effort and the help of a video like this one, then the next set of options really isn't too far away. Investing in the next style of platform that we will call do it with a little help really is not that hard. In this category will include providers like Vanguard, Hargreaves Lansdown, AJ Bell and Fidelity. Now, while AJ Bell and Hargreaves Lansdown allow you to buy individual shares in companies through their platforms, they charge dealing fees and they're quite high. A dealing fee is essentially the cost that they apply to you for buying individual shares in companies. For Hargreaves Lansdown, for example, it's $11.95 per trade up to the first 9 trades. After that, it gets slightly cheaper, but there's still a cost there every time. If you consider that Freetrade and Trading 212 don't have this cost at all, then that looks really expensive. As well as that, HL don't allow fractional shares, which means the ability to buy a bit of a share. So if you wanted to buy Amazon, for example, on HL, you would have to stump up the full £3,100 that Amazon currently is at the time of recording this, plus the dealing fee cost. If you're looking to buy individual shares in businesses, then there are much cheaper options than Hargreaves Lansdown for doing this. In my opinion, the strength of these platforms that I've listed here is in the index fund ETF offering. Vanguard, as an example, is probably the cheapest overall and provide a selection of index funds for you to choose from. You can't buy shares in individual companies, and all the funds on the platform are Vanguard's own. But in this category, they are by far the cheapest, with a platform fee of 0.15% per year. And then fund fees on top of this, which average around 0.2%, but can go as high as 0.7%, depending on the fund you pick. But most sit well below this. So when you compare that to Moneybox, who charge a £1 a month flat fee, 0.45% management fee every year, plus then the fees that are associated with the actual funds themselves, you can see how Vanguard is a much cheaper way of doing it. As well as that, if you actually look at the investments that these robo investors invest in, you'll often find that it's typically Vanguard funds anyway. So on Plum, for example, their American Dream investment choice is actually just the Vanguard US Equity Index Fund. You can find out the funds that the robo investors invest in by clicking on the key information documents on their websites, just like this one here. You can then just buy it directly yourself, reducing that fee, and set up a direct debit to automate the investing if you like. All I'm trying to show you here is that the robo-investing platforms are charging you a premium for the convenience that they offer. There's nothing wrong with that. I shop at little Tesco sometimes because I can't be bothered to go around the big one. But in this video here, I discuss how to decode the names of index funds. Before you plunge into the robo-investors, maybe give it a watch and see if you feel that after watching it, you could maybe take a stab at a platform like Vanguard or HL instead. Now, while Vanguard is cheaper, HL has a wider choice of funds for you to invest in, not just Vanguard branded funds. So if you want a wider selection, HL may be an option, but they are more expensive than Vanguard. These types of platforms and the fee structures that they have in place suit the style of investing where it's set it and forget it index fund investing, and aren't really designed, in my opinion, effectively to be used for trading on a day-to-day basis or buying individual companies, because they either don't offer it or the fees are too high. You can of course do that on the side on other types of platforms, but you just need to be really aware of the capital gains tax allowances, and obviously investing outside of an ISA, you are subject to taxes potentially. So just keep that in mind if you are going to dabble elsewhere. But what if you want the ability and flexibility to do it all under one platform? You want to buy funds, but you also want to have the ability to buy shares in businesses. For example, you see that companies that focus on space exploration are doing well. You decide to grab yourself some extra galactic shares. Honestly, I could do it all day. In this category, in my opinion, there are two standout performers, Freetrade and Trading 212. A quick search on either will show you all of the ETFs these platforms offer. They have Vanguard ETFs, as well as that, you can purchase shares in businesses without dealing fees. And you can purchase fractional shares. There's nothing stopping you buying just £10 of Tesla as an example. When you compare the two side by side, 212 is cheaper. Now, there has been news recently that Trading 212 introduced a new fee. This is a 0.15% currency conversion fee that you pay on any investment that isn't listed in pounds when you buy or sell it. This has caused a bit of an uproar as 212 heavily promoted themselves as a completely free platform. And this fee kind of came out of nowhere. But a little context here, guys. Freetrade have the same fee, but they charge 0.45%, which actually means that Trading 212 is still cheaper than Freetrade, especially when you consider that Freetrade charge £3 per month for their ISA product and have certain investments behind a paywall. There is one massive thing to consider here though, and that is the fact that Trading 212 are currently not allowing new people to sign up, and Freetrade are. As a result of the whole GameStop thing, Trading 212 have shut their doors to new customers, and for the last 6 weeks, they haven't shown any sign of opening them again. I contacted 212 to ask when they will reopen, and the answer was basically, we have no timescale for this. It's worth noting if you already have a Trading 212 account that the service is running normally, and if you have a general investment account, you'll switch that to an ISA if you like, without issue. It's just if you've never used the app that you're going to have an issue getting on board at the minute. The Freetrade ISA fee is a barrier to some people, especially those of you who want to invest a smaller amount each month. But neither Freetrade or 212 charge a percentage-based management fee on an annual basis, like all of the other platforms that we've discussed today. So that means once you've got a few £1,000s invested with Freetrade, it actually becomes cheaper than a lot of these other platforms anyway. So you can see as your portfolio grows, or if you're someone that invests a larger amount, that £3 fixed fee might actually be quite attractive. I've linked to every platform I have mentioned in the description below. I'm not sponsored by any of these platforms, but if you use the Freetrade link, we both get a free share. 212 have a waiting list that you can sign up for when they eventually reopen. They have stated that they will also honour any free shares for anyone that's on the waiting list, but only Freetrade have an active sign-up bonus that currently works if that's something that you're interested in. I will personally be using Trading 212 for this year's ISA as I want the flexibility to buy ETFs and individual shares. Now, I do think that 212 could have done a better job of communicating everything that was going on with the GameStop issues and all the other stuff that's happened in the last 6 weeks. But it still stands that the app is the cheapest one that I can find in the UK, and I think the app is really nice to use. I like the features around how they provide all of the financials for the businesses on there. It's really good. But if 212 didn't exist tomorrow, I would join Freetrade in a heartbeat. It's again another really cheap, easy to use service. It's just not quite as cheap as Trading 212 at the minute. I will be keeping my Vanguard ISA open, and I'll keep cash on balance on the platform so that I can invest in index funds through them if I wanted to, but I won't be contributing any new funds this financial year. I like to mix it up with my ISAs for 2 reasons really. First of all, I run a finance YouTube channel, and I think it's really good that I have active experience investing on all of the different platforms so that I can comment on them. And secondly, I like to spread my risk by having multiple pots on different platforms that are all covered by the Financial Services Compensation Scheme. So don't be surprised if I swap around each year. It doesn't mean you have to. This is just a personal choice. There is no right answer. There is a lot of choice, but just don't overthink it. We were all extroverts once. The key thing is, thank God, your first time isn't going to be your only time.
Oh no.
You can always change provider the next year, or you can even switch mid-year if the platform you're moving to has an ISA switching service like Vanguard does. Just before you pick a platform, define the style of investing that you want to engage in so that you don't make a mistake. And if you need to brush up on all the different types of ISAs and what they do, watch this video here.